Well, I thought we could read a little bit from Joel Goldsmith today from his great book, A Parentheses in Eternity, which we've read from a couple times. And yeah, I thought I would just say a couple words before we reread this excerpt. Generally speaking, for me, in regards to, this manifesting stuff, I've always found the more general approach more effective in my life than trying to manifest specific things. Now, we've discussed this many times. Of course, so much of this stuff from a practical level depends on your sensibility, right? There are people who are really good at manifesting specific goals, getting things done, manifesting things, demonstrating things within a specific time frame, manifesting like specific amounts of money, manifesting a specific, type of car. We hear these specific stories a lot. And it works really well for a lot of people. Depending on your sensibility, it very well might work for you. However, I have found for a lot of people I work with and for myself that if you have more of like, I almost want to say like a spiritual sensibility in regards to this stuff. Like I've got much more of like, I'm just trying to feel good right now in the moment, right? Like God is here right now in the moment. If you have that kind of outlook or approach towards this stuff, the general approach where like things are good, I recognize the good right now, my expectation is that good is coming into my life by recognizing the good right now. That general approach I find serves me much, much better than trying specifically to manifest anything in particular. Because when I try usually to manifest something specific, like in the past, years ago, like I tried to manifest a specific amount of money in a certain period of time, it never happened for me in that way. I never got that money in that certain amount of time because I inadvertently put too much pressure on myself. You know what I mean? Imaginatively, I put too much pressure on myself. I was not able to relax into the demonstration, but instead, the law of reversed effort kicked in, and I imaginatively thought about not reaching the goal as opposed to having the goal. And this is the case for a lot of people, whether it comes to money or a certain relationship or a certain job, or solving a health issue or losing a certain amount of weight in a certain period of time. By setting too concrete a goal and thinking about it too much, often you self-sabotage yourself. The law of reversed effort kicks in, and even though you're trying hard, trying your best to reach the goal, to demonstrate the goal, your imagination says, no, this isn't actually going to happen. While if you just kind of have a more general outlook, like, set some general intentions, I would like to have, more money or around this amount of money sometime, in the near future. I'd like to be in a relationship sooner as opposed to later. I'd like to lose this weight, sometime, gradually over a relatively short period of time. More general intentions like that, and where you're not thinking about them all the time, can often serve us better, right? This should all be pretty clear. And again, I think one of the keys is just not being dogmatic about it, and finding what works for your sensibility and your, for your individual temperament to find out how these ideas are best suited for implementation in your life. And, once you get more used to implementing these ideas, you figure out more and more what works for you. And relying more on your strengths. All this is a precursor to, one could say, the deeper reason why the general approach works for a lot of people, which is ties into the video yesterday that we were talking about yesterday, the SP video, about the lack of manipulation, the lack of trying forcefully to get something into your life, and letting loose and letting God, put it there for you. This is not to say we shouldn't use our minds or be practical or, rationally think about what we want. It's just the act of, manifesting change and demonstrating change in our life externally is not something that we ever do alone. And if we can step back and recognize that really this is all God in action, the universe in action, and that we're just part of that flow, and allow ourselves to be in that flow more as opposed to fighting against it, as opposed to saying it has to happen this way or it has to happen at this, in this amount of time. If we allow ourselves to just surrender more to the flow, we feel better. That's, a big reason that the general method works well for a lot of people. And getting more specific about manifesting a certain desire in a certain period of time often does not work well. So this is from a parentheses in Eternity by Joel Goldsmith. I will put a link above to several of the other Joel Goldsmith videos that we've done that are on a playlist. And before I read it again, I'll just say Goldsmith is like a really interesting teacher and writer, and especially if like you're coming at this from like Neville. He's a very interesting person to compare and contrast. It's very interesting to compare and contrast Neville's teachings with Goldsmith's teachings. So Goldsmith here writes, "We cannot bring God to our body or mind. God is already the life of every body. Every body is the temple of the living God, whether animal, vegetable, or mineral. We are now under God's law, God's love, and in God's being, not by bringing God to us, but by bringing ourselves to God, and by placing every person, saint and sinner alike, in God. Those who bring themselves to God are the beneficiaries of God's grace. Those who try to, quote-unquote, finitize God and put him into their minds and bodies lose him. Loose him and have him. When we release ourselves from the mental struggle and let God have his will here where we are, and in this whole universe, we have released God and we ourselves are free. The fetters that bind us are in the mind. It is with our mind that we are trying to hold on to God. If we let our mind relax, we will realize that we cannot lay hold of God, but that God can lay hold of us. We cannot use the mind to get God. Our mind has a function, and it can operate constructively in our life. But let us not try to use it to get God. There is no struggle except in the mind. When the mind is still, there is no strain, and God becomes a living presence. The Christ, the individualization and individual experience of God has come alive in us. We feel it as a presence, as a cloak around us. Release God from any obligation and let God perform his work." So a wonderful excerpt from A Parentheses in Eternity by Joel Goldsmith. And yeah, there's not much more to say. I do want to let you know that I've been responding to most comments. Been getting a lot of good comments. It's been pretty interesting responding to people on YouTube. But that said, I still, the best way to talk to me without question is to contact me via email. Email me at info@radicalcounselor.com, and we can have a much more thorough discussion via email. Or if you want to speak to me on the phone or Zoom, have a brief free consultation, we can set that up too if you email me. YouTube comments can be interesting, but quite frankly, they're not the best place to discuss subjects like we just covered. It's better to get deeper and to have more involved interactions, in my opinion. So if you want to reach me, you can email me at info@radicalcounselor.com. And I hope you found this video helpful.